Hi there, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm putting together my Project Life spread for June 1st through June 9th, 2026, and I'm using the Storyteller kit number 6 from Ellie Edwards. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so this spread covers a little bit more than a week. And even though I do my Project Life weekly, I am not super strict with what my week is. Generally, it's Monday through Sunday, but when I travel, I do each travel destination as its own spread because the week cutoffs are very arbitrary and it just would be silly to not break it by the location. So this week or spread covers the first week of June and a couple days into the next week prior to us leaving for vacation. So it's 9 days, so there's a little bit more than usual. And I didn't have too many photos, I guess I should say. I had a lot of photos. I didn't have too many. So that's good because there wasn't a lot of stories going on. Instead, I was really just focused on getting ready for vacation. I did have a few stories come up, so I do have those. I'm thinking about those, trying to decide how I want to arrange these. The main stories, though, are we got some new furniture in our living room, which is pictured here, and this is also that. Let me see. I'm not sure exactly how I want to arrange it. And then I had a bunch of getting ready for vacation and photos and stuff in the yard. I don't think this is exactly how I want to arrange this, but that's just to start. So for this spread, I am working with the Storyteller kit. So I actually originally planned this spread. Let me just pull this out. So this is Storyteller kit number 6. And if you go into that classroom, I have a lesson where I talk about how I plan out all of my projects, including this one. And you'll see that I originally planned this spread to be documenting our trip to Banff. And I wanted to document our trip to Banff with this. I thought it was a great kit for that, and it really is. It still would be. And I also plan to have an insert using this pattern paper and these 2 tags to document a little bit more of that story. However, I changed my plan because I got some themed outdoorsy kits that just would work perfectly for that vacation. And this kit is not themed. It's a little bit more flexible with what I want to document. So I thought it might make sense to switch it up and put this kit here for this week that didn't really have a theme and use those themed products for those spreads. So what I'm going to do is just pull these pieces aside and make that insert in that week, even though I'm not using this kit anymore. And that will just be a separate layout that lives in this album. And then for this spread, I'm going to just do the rest of what I had originally planned. So I'd planned to do 4 stories. So I have, let's see, I want to do a story about the new furniture. I want to do a story about prepping for vacation. And I want to do a story about our yard. And then I guess the 4th one will just be like my bullet point list. So I just need to figure out kind of how I want to lay things out for this spread. So I have a sketch of how I originally planned to do this one in that classroom. And so I'm looking at that off camera. And I think that I originally planned to use these guys paired with these for some embellishments, which I think still work really well. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to put on them. I feel like they need something. Let's see. And then I need to do my title card. So I'm thinking I'm going to put these 2 on. No, probably not the green on the grass. It kind of gets lost. Something like that. And then this one maybe on my title card. I need some sort of pattern paper or something for there. And then let's see. Oh, this is also for that insert. So I'm going to put that to the side. And then I had wanted to put these to document little details from my photos because I had originally thought this would be a travel spread and I would want to kind of label the destinations. But I can use these on my photos to still just document whatever story I have to tell about each of these photos, just a couple additional words about these photos. So let me just kind of lay these out. There we go. And then I just need to pick something from my stash to be a background here. I need to do my journaling. I think I'm probably going to want to add something on top of these. I'm not sure what yet. Maybe like a heart or something from my stash, and maybe pair something with these just to add a little bit of layering. And then that will pretty much do it. I'll add some words on these. Maybe I'll do some stamping. I'm not sure yet. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put you guys on a voiceover and get this one put together. Okay, so I started with trying to decide what card I wanted to use for my title card. I went over to my Project Life card organization stash, and I have a separate video sharing how I have that set up. If you're interested, I'll link it in the description box below. But I decided to go through my black and white patterns, or like I guess these are neutral patterns. So blacks, whites, grays, because I didn't want to bring any more color into the spread. My photos are super colorful. The kit I'm working with is super colorful. And I felt like this would be a good way to kind of add a base to that little chipboard and die cut set without drawing away from all of the color. So I decided to go with this white with black polka dot. And then I wanted to add some sort of embellishment on there. I decided to pull just a basic label to add my dates on, and I'm just going to add those with a rolling date stamp. And then I pulled over those puffy hearts. I have these 3 kind of, I guess they're sort of like a starburst die cut, and they have those circled chipboard pieces on top of them that are like they're split with a color on the top and a white piece on the bottom, or however you want to rotate it. The white could be at the top if you wanted. And those would be super cute to add initials on or a date on or something like that. But I decided against that. Instead, I wanted to just add a piece of decor on there and just call it good. So I pulled over these puffy hearts with the thought that I wanted to add those on top of those die cut pieces. I'm just recentering my label there because it wasn't super center. And there I'm adding that heart on top of there. I really like how that came out, so I'm just going to follow that same treatment on the rest of these. I decided to add the other 2 of these pieces on top of 2 of my 4x6 photos because those photos are larger. There's a little bit more space to add a larger embellishment. When I printed that photo of pumpkin in the yard with that grass there, I did that intentionally, adding that extra piece of grass or space there, so knowing I could add a chipboard piece or some sort of embellishment on that spot. When I take photos and when I choose to print my photos, I'm always keeping in mind that I might want to add embellishments on top of those photos and leaving some empty space like that. So in that photo, it definitely could have been a vertical photo where pumpkin was centered, but instead I added that grass area, knowing it would be a perfect home for some additional embellishment. I'm shifting around the photos and everything at this point. I didn't want the 3 story cards in a line, like in a diagonal line on that left-hand side. It seemed too, I don't know, just 2 in a row. And then I wanted to shift around the photos so that they balanced a little more. I didn't want multiple green photos next to each other. I didn't want multiple photos of pumpkin next to each other. Right now you can see I have those 2 photos of pumpkin up in the top right that are both with that same new cabinet, and I don't like that, so I am going to end up switching that up at some point. At this point, I'm just deciding how I'm going to do my journaling. I pulled over my everyday carry, which is sort of like a Hobonichi Weeks, and that is where I keep quick notes during the week. Typically what I do is I will transfer from that to my Take a Note, and then I'll use my Take a Note for reference when I am putting together my Project Life spread or whatever other scrapbook layouts I'm doing that are stories from that week. However, because I was traveling, I never got a chance to transfer this week into my taken out. So I will do that at some point because it's fun and because I like documenting it in there and I like having that complete record. But for purposes of putting together this layout, I didn't have that for reference. So I'm just using my everyday carry. That's something just to keep in mind as I talk through my process in a lot of these videos. My best case scenario is that I will have my stories written down and recorded in a fun, decorative way in my taken out, but that's not always the case. The only journal that I really force myself to do daily is that everyday carry. So sometimes I just don't feel like writing, I don't feel like journaling, or I don't have the time. And that's okay. What I do is I take a couple of minutes and use that everyday carry just to write in there what happened in super quick note fashion. And that way I have that for reference when I'm ready to do it in the future. For my journaling cards, I wanted to add some titles to the 3 stories that are specific stories. So I stamped out furniture, outdoors, and vacation prep using this new alpha stamp set from Ali Edwards and black StazOn ink. And then I'm just doing my journaling on those cards. I'm writing with a Uniball 1. This is a 0.38 and it's the little chunky barrel. And this is my favorite go-to pen of the moment, or gel pen of the moment. I definitely rotate between a few different ones. I still love the Energel Clenna. I love the Sarasa Mark-On. There's quite a few that I love, and this is just the one I've been gravitating towards lately. I will link it in the description box below along with my other favorite pens in case you're interested in picking up a new gel pen. I'm just switching through these journaling cards here and doing my journaling. I realized that my journaling wasn't going all the way to the bottom, so I figured I would want to put something else on there, but I haven't decided what yet. I'm taking a break after these 2 journaling cards because I want to move on and do some of my embellishing. Doing handwritten journaling wears out my hand, so I like to take a break in between writing and working on other things. I also really enjoy the decorative part the most, so I like to have a break to play with the products. I decided to create embellishment clusters on most of my photos using this grid washi tape. This is from Cocoa Daisy and it came in an earlier kit, probably earlier this year or last year. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to layer that with one of these die cut pieces from the kit. And then I'm going to add one of those chipboard hearts that are also from Ali Edwards on each of these clusters. What I'm doing here is I am just going to write out a little sentiment about each of these photos, and then I will call each of these clusters good. I'm going to go through and do all of these on the entire spread, but I'm not going to do them all at once as I'm just rotating through doing various things. I liked using these to add just one little bit of journaling on each photo to provide a little context, especially because a lot of these photos were of little details in the yard or things like that that I wanted to just add a little bit more to. This photo of pumpkin in my suitcase was actually upside down before, and then you saw me flip it around when I realized that this was just packing right before our vacation, which was actually at the end of this week, so I probably would have put it on the right-hand side. In fact, it was originally over there, but I moved it because I didn't want the 2 photos of pumpkin next to each other, and pumpkin's in 2 of those 4x6 photos, which have to be on the right-hand side because that's where the 4x6 pockets are. So when laying out my spread, I tend to put my photos in chronological order, left to right across the spread, and then I will move them if it makes sense for other reasons, such as not having 2 pumpkin photos next to each other. And maybe that doesn't really matter, but for me, I don't know, I liked it better laid out this way. This photo is a pumpkin out in the yard. There's a couple photos of that on this spread, which was something we were doing this week. We've been doing it for a couple weeks now that it's warmer out, just taking him outside. I used to do it more when he was younger, and then I kind of fell out of the habit for the past couple of years, and I wanted to start doing it again because I think he really loves it. For a while there, he was not as thrilled, but now he seems to be super excited about it and asks to go outside, and he's super cute in his little harness. So it's fun to do, and it gives us an excuse to sit out on the porch. We also got some new furniture this week, which was that one journaling card that's on the right-hand side there. So I have some photos next to it that represent that furniture. I have a photo of the living room with the new coffee table and end table, and then this photo
is of the end table now that we had it all set up and Pumpkin laid on top of it, just to kind of check it out. And then this one is of the inside. When we first got it, Pumpkin went inside to check out the inside before I filled it up with our DVDs that we don't really use anymore, but I still keep them in there for some reason. And the old cabinet that was there before had the DVDs in it, so I just moved them over to this one. I'm adding a chipboard heart onto each of these little embellishment clusters just to add a little bit of texture so that it's not all flat and add something else. I also like the repeated hearts throughout the spread. I have them on those cards, on those photos, and I also have the bigger hearts on the chipboard pieces. I swapped the two photos on the right hand side there because, like I said, I didn't want the two brown cabinets next to each other. Even though Pumpkin is now in these two photos next to each other, they are at least very different coloring. So I thought it worked a little bit better to swap it out. But I did want all of those furniture photos on that side by the furniture story. There was that extra gap of space at the bottom of these journaling cards, so I decided to just use the same washi tape that I already had out to add a bit of a border across the bottom. And I'm going to do that on all of the cards that have that stamped title on them. For working in a spread like this, even though I'm pulling pieces from my stash like this washi tape or these chipboard hearts, once I pull something from my stash, I consider it kind of part of my kit for this spread. And I continue going back to it if possible. So when looking for an embellishment to put across the bottom of these cards, I'm going to pull from what's already on my desk before I go into my stash to find something else. This is going to help the spread be more cohesive, and it's also going to help me put it together a little bit quicker because I'm not digging through my stash looking for a product at every step of the way. On this card, I'm journaling about the collection of stories about going outdoors. For Project Life, I often will come up with themes for the week for my stories. So this one is about outdoors. So I'm talking about Pumpkin going outdoors because that was part of our outdoor stories. I'm also talking about working in the garden or the yard and the roses blooming, my apple tree is starting to grow, and just the weather being nicer, so we're getting outside. So all of these different stories that didn't really happen at the same time, just all during this week, and they all relate to outdoors. So I'm just putting them all together on one journaling card, even though they are smaller stories and they're not all necessarily at the same time. This way I'm able to kind of lump them together into one bigger story around a theme. After these three journaling cards, the last journaling card I have left to do is my bullet point list. And I tend to do one of those in pretty much every Project Life spread, and I tend to save it towards the end. So really my purpose behind that journaling card is to create a bullet point list of micro stories from the week. And my thought with that are they're little stories that I want to remember, but they're not big enough to have their own card. They're not big enough to have their own photo. Sometimes they do relate to photos, but very rarely do they even have a photo representing what the story is. And that way I'm just capturing those really small details of life, which is kind of my entire point of this project. So after I'm finishing off the outdoor card, I'm just starting to slip things into the pocket. I like to slip them into the pocket as I go. Sometimes I usually wait until the end or close till the end because I don't want to have to pull things back out if I want to move them around or change things. But on this side now I'm pretty much set other than that one journaling card. So I'm just slipping everything into the pocket to get it out of the way. That way it's easier to kind of shift it around on my desk without the cards moving. And I do have to trim a couple of them down to make them fit better. But there you can see I'm just kind of looking and making sure I like the way it looks. And then I'm going to do this bullet point list. Because I have these hearts over here, I thought those would make really cute bullet points, and they do, and they work to tie the spread together. So I'm adding those on there. I'm adding just a few stories. I'm looking back at my everyday carry for those little stories from this week. The first one I wrote is about injuring my finger. I accidentally grated it with a cheese grater, which was super painful. And so you probably saw in some of my videos, I had a Band-Aid on my finger for a while. I don't anymore because by the time I'm filming this, it's been a few weeks since this happened and is thankfully healed most of the way. But I didn't want to take a photo of that, and I didn't want to document it with a larger card, but I do want to make note of that story because it's something that happened and it's a part of my week and a part of my story. So that's just a good example of using the bullet point list to add in these micro stories. I know a lot of people include those in their journaling, and I definitely do that in my daily journal. And sometimes it overlaps. But with my daily journal, I don't ever put a focus on capturing everything. It's just whatever I'm feeling about at the time. Whereas with Project Life, I try to capture all of the details and have a more comprehensive story. Here's a look at that completed spread. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Bye.